So guys, like when I was young, I grew up in a family that was very hostile, very volatile, and very narcissistic. I had a narcissistic mother who was so insecure that all she could do is compete for the attention. That's all she could do. And I mean that literally. Like that's all she could do was be threatened by having to share the attention, especially with me. I was the scapegoat. I was the one who, received from her all that she wouldn't look at in herself. So when I was young, my dad liked me a lot and took a special care for me. I mean, I'm his son, and, I remember the first time that law enforcement was involved in my life. And it was incredible. I mean, looking back after the years of being trained to, really reject my own identity, because so long you're forced by abuse to step into a role that is not you, but it just is that role that serves the fantasy of the narcissist. I'm a hero, I'm a savior, I'm a victim. But my dad used to give me attention, and I was his oldest son, and he was really excited to spend time with me. And I remember being young one time where my dad, I was so young, but I remember him throwing me up in the air and catching me, and I was laughing hysterically. And I just remember, that he was smiling really big at me. And I look over at my mom, who's sitting in the couch on the recliner, and all she could do was roll her eyes, shake her head, huff and puff, and be very discouraged about that, not willing to share the attention. And to that extreme, guys, we're talking about infantile reactions and responses, and infantile thinking. And I would even say spoiled brat, entitled, rotten thinking, where everything is sacrificed in order to be the center of attention. And when my mom saw this, for the first time, I didn't know what it was back then, but looking back, I can see that she was showing so much displeasure about having to share my dad with me and to share that relationship. And he would go to work, and my mom would, play the victim of me all the time in an act, in a performance, and pretend to my father that, I did things that I didn't to her, and was a pathological liar, just would lie and make up any story. And it didn't matter. To her, it was true because it was in her mind, but there was no external facts of reality to match that. And of course, it's an identity theft. It really is when you look back. But in order to grab that attention and to take the attention off of me onto her and not share my dad with me, she would play the victim of me and complain to my dad that I did things when he was gone at work, because it would be my word against hers, and she would always make him have to choose, really. It's either me or it's him. That kind of, pigeonholing, where they make you have to choose me or you, and somebody always has to lose. And I always was the type that said everybody can win, but the narcissist thinks this way. It's black and white, it's win or lose, it's greater than less than, it's I'm superior to you. And so my mom told my dad that I did things that I didn't to her. And I remember my dad came home and he was very upset, thinking that he needed to save my mom. So she knew how to play off his base instincts of being a man and protecting his wife. And so she knew that full on, very calculated, very manipulative and deceitful, and knew how to position herself to eliminate me as the competition over that attention. And so my dad comes home and he throws me in my room. And I remember, weeks prior to this, of her showing this displeasure about having to share the attention and whispering in my dad's ear. And my dad would get upset at me and I wouldn't even know what was going on. It was like that ambush and like that surprise element to narcissistic abuse where, they're playing both sides of the fence and you don't know it. And they're hiding the abuse from everybody else that they're doing to you. And they're keeping it on the down low, you know what I mean? But they let you know, and especially in front of the people that they're telling their lies to, because they want that bad reaction. So it becomes the evidence to say, see, I told you, John was crazy, John was violent, John is dangerous. And so my mom would run with these stories and these narratives in this sickness, and would get my dad to throw me in my room, and my dad would come to me and, stand nose to nose and scream at me at the top of his lungs where, spit was flying all over my face. And it was just like, I didn't really want to be spit on, where it's nose smashed to nose. And I remember the first time that I was involved with law enforcement, my dad was over this incident, and my dad did this. And so when I went to turn my back on him, he couldn't take that. He couldn't handle that in his immaturity, and never investigating anything, never questioning the things that my mom would say in her wild accusations and slander and smear campaign from the time I was too young to even know how to defend myself or even what I was involved in here. But my dad would, be that close to me, spitting in my face and screaming because the spit was just flying in my face. And I remember turning my back on him and trying to de-escalate by getting away from that. And he put me in a headlock right away and started screaming like a Karen. He just started screaming, "Help, call the police, John hit me." And so that, of course, happened, and I was whisked away. And of course, the narcissist has everybody in their back pocket, manipulating everybody in a coordinated, organized way in order to have an agreed upon, testimony. You know what I mean? And my mom was very good at manipulating the men in the house, because she was the only female, and probably felt outnumbered by that and felt very threatened by that, and threatened by especially me, who could get the attention in a lot easier fashion without having to do abusive things to get it. And so my dad put me in this headlock and started screaming, "Call the police, help, John hit me." And that's not what happened at all. But they were willing to lie. They were willing to sabotage and undermine my life just to tell this narrative and just to, discard me, get rid of me. You know how the narcissists, they have no problem eliminating you and just annihilating you. Not only your identity, but, it's one thing, not to want to care for somebody and love somebody as a mother and to neglect those duties as a mother. But it's quite another thing when they triangulate and go to third parties and prevent those third parties from being a support to you, whether it's a job, whether it's friends, it doesn't really matter. They collapse through their slander campaigns. They destroy and ruin all other connections. So you're forced to depend on them alone. And that is what my life has been like. And I would say 25 years of my mom being parallel to me, competing with me over the attention, competing to win and to silence me. Because she knew that one day, and especially after getting sober, that one day that God was going to use me to expose the truth. And she always knew there was something different about me, and that's why I was the family scapegoat. And many of you know what this is like. You have that personality that just sees the truth, and you have no problem telling the truth. And so, but you're also accused of being a liar, which the narcissist is only and exclusively a pathological liar, but yet they call you the liar and call you everything that they are. They make you that. So that's an identity transfer and a role reversal that takes place. And they will push and push and push to get a reaction and then pretend to be a victim and switch up so that they can get away with the abuse. But this is what happened. Many years later, I recite this story because after law enforcement got involved in my life, and I decided to move away and move across the country, and I really never got away because my mom never let that go. Once the narcissist has their hooks in you and can be believed, and when you've got law enforcement, in the back pocket, there's nothing that can't be done by the abuser. I mean, it's a way to silence you. So my mom's type of parenting style was just to medicate me to death. And that's not love, that's not care, that's not concern, but that's just the way she thought, was in her neglect and inability to love and care for her son. She just decided that it would be easier to shut me up and medicate me and not have to deal with a sexual abuse that happened to me and feed off of and extort that abuse rather than heal and love and support. And so she would, keep the problems open-ended and ongoing. And if I was abused by others, she loved it and got off on it. And it was that duper's delight smirk when, my dad's back is turned from her, and the snickering and the smirking, showing an enjoyment, that's done with this abuse. So I ended up going to jail, and my dad showed up, and it was a coordinated family thing to get rid of me. And she had my dad in her back pocket and my brothers. But, and it's just amazing to think about how the truth eventually surfaces and comes to the top, and comes like cream to the top, it rises, and it can't be held down no matter what the narcissist does. And so when my dad put me in a headlock and after turning my back on him, it was this coordinated, agreed upon, pre-planned thing. And I remember weeks before this incident, my dad would just, slap his hands together and tell me, I'm going to put you in jail. I'm going to put you in jail. And they got off on it. They didn't love me or care about me at all. They had no concern for my future or for any issues or problems. I mean, for God's sake, my dad's brother sexually molested me, and my dad and mom were so into status and appearance. They didn't want to lose their house. They didn't want to lose, these things that they had worked so hard for, quote unquote. But really, they just, buried the truth and made me bear it alone with no support. And so each and every time that I would try to talk to my mom about the sexual abuse that happened, she would roll her eyes, shake her head, call me crazy, deny it, misdirect the conversation, and pretend like I didn't tell her, and that she just didn't know, things like that. And it's all designed to build up those reactions. They are trying their hardest to build up the bad reactions and get you to explode so that you can be labeled as the crazy one. So they don't have to look at themselves, and they're deathly afraid and will do anything it takes to make sure that they're not held accountable. And they even get off on it. They rejoice at escaping and being able to manipulate everybody and not bear the consequences that they themselves deserve to have for doing such behavior, but are all too glad when they can get you to bear the consequence for their actions. And so when my dad put me in that headlock, it was really amazing because it was this, pre-planned thing where weeks prior, he's rubbing his hands together saying, I'm going to put you in jail, I'm going to put you in jail. So it's coordinated, it's organized, it's planned, it's well thought out. And in order to do that, they would pretend that I attacked my dad or that I threw punches at my dad or struck my dad when it's not true. It wasn't the case. So I went to jail for something that I didn't do. And the rejection and the pain and the loneliness, and also, suffering from a sexual abuse by a relative, and much less my dad's brother, it was really hard to deal with. It was amazing pain to deal with as a young man, as a young boy. And I didn't know what to do. And there was nobody to turn to because my mom would infiltrate and get to the people that were a support and help because she didn't want me exposing her or telling on her for, the types of manipulation and abuse that I saw. And so she had coordinated with my dad in a victim performance, getting my dad to believe that he needed to save her and fight for her and over her and for her safety. And that is what she did. And so she got my dad to be very aggressive and very violent towards me, and with me de-escalating and turning away and backing away from this physical situation that was occurring, I ended up being falsely accused that I had done something that I had not done. And it led to years of drinking myself into oblivion. I mean, I can't tell you just, how the addictions went after that, because of the abuse and just being suppressed and suffocated and oppressed by someone that wouldn't ever let me be me. There was never an acknowledgement of my own autonomy, my own individuality, my own independence, but just emerging together in trauma, and dragging me under that trauma. My mom was very self-harming and self-mutilating and dangerously insecure, and would want me to bear that same kind of mentality over myself and over life. And so she would do many collapsing and controlling things to collapse my standing and collapse my identity, and to try to get me to step into the role that she had cast, which was greater than, less than, I win, you lose, and needing to demonstrate that all the time, that I'm superior to you, here's a mess. And that power that comes from thinking you got away with something because you can transfer a mess you made onto somebody else and make them carry it, pay the consequences for it, and really go through life-altering experiences. And so my whole point to saying this whole incident is that it never left me. My mom and family members, and my mom especially, has been the main one behind the community-based policing, coordinated, organized gang stalking in my life. And she does that by, and is believable because of her manipulation, where I had no fighting chance when I was young, and marginalized me and stuck this on me and agreed together with the rest of my family, whether it's by threats or bribes or manipulation, to go along with this, even though there was no other witnesses, no other evidence. They just agreed together to make sure that I was taken out of the house. And this was the one way they knew that they could not have to care for me or my needs or the problems that were created from me being sexually abused by my dad's brother, by Mark, my dad's brother. So instead of acknowledging me, instead of admitting and dealing with the proper process in patience and love and kindness and getting on my level to love me out of this pain, they decided to get rid of me instead. And this is classic narcissistic abuse. It's the idealization and the love bombing, and then the devaluation, and then the discard, and it's repeat. So that cycle is all I've known growing up. And my mom did many times try to get rid of me and even force medicate me to death into oblivion and out of my own, standing in mind and health, and did not care as long as I was kept silent and didn't expose the fake self and the fake construct that she had built as her life, because nothing is real, nothing is genuine. It's all a performance, it's all an act, it's all just somebody con artistry, doing con artistry, and there is no genuine identity or personality there. And what I thought was my mother was really not my mother at all. It was just a role, and one of the many roles that she would step into in her performance, and getting everybody to go along with believing that that's who she really is this poor little innocent girl that doesn't know how to do anything, to get everybody to cater to her and manipulate everybody into thinking that she's too stupid to orchestrate and organize this kind of destruction in another person's life. But so the police incident was never let go of. And my mom, everywhere I'd move from that point on, and I got out of my house at a young age and tried to get away because I knew that I couldn't survive the levels of abuse that were being done, whether it's force medicating me as a condition to stay in my house, or putting me in jail. It was ruining my life. And I saw very quickly that they're able to play both sides of the fence and have no guilt, no shame, no remorse, and no empathy or sympathy for other pains, and even facilitate the creating of damage and getting third parties to abuse you. And that is what my mom was a master at. Getting my dad, getting my brothers to view me in a different light other than who I really am and what I really am. And of course, when someone is feeding off your pain all the time and keeping the wounds open and driving those wounds deeper, there is no way to not react bad eventually to it. eventually you're going to give a bad reaction, and then that will become the evidence that they're looking for to point the finger and continue the slander as they poison the well, and then look for the evidence. And if you don't give them that evidence and your life contradicts the slander and the fantasy and really the grandiosity that they have, because they need to be a hero at any cost, at any expense, they need to be a savior. And this really speaks to the insecurity that's in them. It's so great. The insecurity is like a black hole, and everything that's good gets sacrificed into the black hole. And that's just to stimulate and to use you as fuel, to fuel the fantasy and to uphold that which is false and that which is grandiose. Never dealing with the grandiosity in an accurate, appropriate way, but just using your life as the sacrifice, as that thing that gets to be offered up on the altar of their ego to get those bad reactions so that they can come alive and feel powerful and superior and in control. And so after this was done, I got away, I moved across the country, and it followed me. And I didn't really realize that my mom had been calling and talking to the local sheriff's office because, I was crippled, I was handicapped. If it's a job, my job would be called, and, all the ability to support myself was being stolen from me all the time. And I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know who was fighting me. Or I just thought that it was really bad luck, and I just, must be cursed or something. Or I thought, this is just the breaks of life. You hear people talk about the pains and the breaks in life and how life is not so sweet and can be very hard. And I just assumed, so much. And especially in my drinking days, when I would drink, I would just, escape that way from the pain of having to reconnect with myself. But as soon as I got sober and reconnected with myself, immediately the gang stalking started. And, my mom, I would always tell her, Mom, I'm moving here, thinking she was a friend, thinking she had my back, thinking she was a support and a mother, and I would tell her what city I'd move to and where I'd be going next. And I would complain all the time about people following me, people harassing me, and my property being damaged, and all these different tactics that you guys have heard of in community-based policing and narcissistic abuse. But I didn't realize that I had been coming to my enemy, my worst enemy, and letting them know where I was going to go. So the monitoring and the stalking and the obsession continued in my life, where I couldn't get away. Even when I moved across the country, my mom would call the local sheriff's office and let them know, by just referring to this incident and saying to the police, he's dangerous, he's a criminal, he's going to hurt somebody, he's mentally ill. And, they forced me to go to a hospital when I was young and force drugged me and force medicated me. And, years later, this diagnosis was, removed from my background because it was just a fraudulent diagnosis that really had nothing to do with reality. My family was pretty connected, and my mom was a great manipulator of third parties and knew what to say, knew how to say it to get people on her side. And so the community-based policing has been going on in my life for the last 25 years. I haven't gotten a break. My freedom has been taken. They have, systematically destroyed my ability to work, to be employed and gainfully employed at least, to be able to support myself. They destroy property all the time, whether it's cars. I've gone through car after car because of the harassment and stalking, whether it's keying my car, putting nails in the tire over and over and over in a repetitious way, so many times that, it's just comical, you know what I mean? It's over and over and over and over to break you and to break your will and to make you more easily manageable, because it's all done through, whether it's your local church, your local community watch group, or whether it's the local police department, the local sheriff's office. And they use many tactics in a coordinated, organized way to abuse citizens that are innocent, that there is no due process for us. We don't have a trial by a jury with our peers, and there is no due process. It's just straight up profile policing, where they label you and call you a terrorist and say you're a religious extremist and dangerous, and then begin to destroy your life and remove that autonomy, remove that which is the support for your life, So it's forced dependency by abuse, and they hide the abuse in a very coordinated, organized way. And my mom, would call the local sheriff's office, each and every city that I would move to, and tell the local sheriff's office these things about me, slandering me. But yet, when confronted about it, it's just, what does that have to do with me? She says in an angry way. And it's really just the guilt and the shame speaking, because it's been going on for 25 years. I never got free. When I thought I got free, there she was, parallel to me, in a competition game, competing with me to win at any cost, at any expense. And it was at my expense. It was at the sacrifice of everything that would make for my own independence and autonomy in life. And whether that's calling a job or calling the local sheriff's office to get others and third parties to go after me and target me and harass me and destroy my property and, destroy my coming and going and keep me under surveillance 24/7, that's what was going to be done, because it doesn't matter. The narcissist is never satisfied with the abuse that they do. There is no limit to what they'll do to you. There is no limit. They will lie, cheat, steal, and do whatever it takes to make sure that your story never sees the light of day. And that's why there's so much discrediting and there's so much role reversing and putting you in the position that they should be in. So for me, it's like my mom was doing all these ugly, abusive things, but getting away with it, and then would get the bad reaction eventually to try to transfer all that she was doing in secret onto me, to make me carry it and bear it and suffer the shame and the dishonor and the reproach from things she herself did. And so the following started happening 25 years ago. And, whether it's her infiltrating relationships, whether it's a marriage, whether it's your children, it doesn't really matter. But the narcissist feels that you are their possession and they own you, and that you are just like an appliance, and they turn you on and off, and break you and then put you on the shelf. That's the way they think of you, is that you're just there to serve them and serve a role. And that role is to give them that negative reaction so that they can feel powerful and in control and superior. Because once they get that negative reaction, they can stroke their grandiosity and grandstand over you and feel, like they're something that they're not. And that is the insecurity demanding a sacrifice. It demands that you are put on the altar to be destroyed and ruined and eliminated, because first of all, they can't bear to share the attention, and they do not want to compete with you because they know you'll win. And so they're very underhanded, very deceitful, and very two-faced. And my mom would smile in my face and pretend to love me and pretend that she had my back all the time. And, oh, honey, you're just so worried about things. I don't know why you're so worried. And it's, this denial, for years telling my family, like, I'm being followed, my property's being destroyed, I have it all on camera, it's on video, like, what more do I need? And they would just play stupid and pretend like they didn't know what to do, or that they didn't know what was going on. It's just this fake ignorance, and really willful ignorance, when you uncover the layers of fake and see the envy that these people have. They want to be you. They don't want to just be like you. They want what is yours, and will take what is yours by this role reversal destiny swap game that they play with you. So, they get you in a position of dependency through being so insistent and pushing so hard to get a breakdown and to get a collapse in your life, so that you come to them begging them for help. You come to them asking them to be the savior that they've always wanted to be, and that was my mom. My mom would continue to call any town I moved to, any place I moved to, there she was contacting the local sheriff's office, thinking and meaning well, right? It's like they're so concerned, they just want to keep things safe and save lives, and that's what they hide behind, this fake moral high ground that they hide behind, when it's just, there's nothing moral in them at all. There's no moral bone in their body, but they'll pretend to be so moral and self-righteous pretending like they're just helping you, by abusing you, that their abuse is actually helping you. And, it's just love to you. Don't you understand? We just are concerned and we just care about you. And that's like what my mom's favorite line is we're just concerned. And, hiding her presence in my life, hiding the fact that she was in competition with me. And I never knew that she was in competition with me. I never knew that she had such bad envy and such insecurity that she couldn't share the attention and couldn't allow me to tell my own story, and that's why, she was willing to go to any length. And if it's false accusations, if it's setting me up, throwing me under the bus and putting me in the middle and making me have to fight for my mom and over her with my dad and being put in the middle of that relationship, well, that's what she was going to do. And it didn't matter if it's the neighbors. It didn't matter if it's my brothers. It didn't matter if it's my children. It didn't matter if it was a marriage. It didn't matter what it was. My mom was there slandering and undermining and sabotaging my connections to third parties and then winning those connections over and then using those people as weapons. These people that are your friends end up getting weaponized against you and then manipulated into abusing you and into bailing on you, ghosting, vanishing, withholding, and doing all these things that one day you're just like, what's going on? It's like a light switch gets flicked on. And before you had this support network and friends and people that loved you, and mainly, that just suddenly vanishes, so it's that ambush, surprise, red line that they're looking for because they need your emotions to be emergency level all the time, 24/7, because that's what makes them come alive. That's what makes them feel like they have meaning and purpose in life. So they will always do mega abuse to you and try to conceal it and cover it up and hide the abuse as they continue to abuse you. And when you tell them, hey, I know what you're doing, well, then that's when they play the victim like a professional and are very good at using the victim performance. And I would say the victim act with my mom is one of the staples and the key ingredient to entrapping me and setting me up and putting me in these horrible situations and getting me to trust her, then pulling the rug out from under my feet time and again, kicking out the legs of the chair that I'm sitting on in order to get that breakdown, to cause the pain, to get the bad reactions, to fuel the grandiosity and the power trip, because these people are delusional. They're absolutely delusional when it comes to the desire they have to be grandiose, to be a hero and be a savior in a fantasy. And it is a fantasy. And they will do anything for that fantasy. My family, they never got a chance to really get to know me because I was too busy being manipulated into a role that was cast for me rather than, relating to me. They would relate to the fantasy that my mom had and would relate to the grandiosity. My mom would give opportunities and actually train my dad and my brothers to also be the hero and the savior. And by playing the victim, that is what she was doing in training my other family members to think that she needed to be saved when she was an aggressor and very violent at heart, even though she didn't do physical violence or do any physical abuse. The physical abuse was done by her getting others to do it. And that's what she would do in her victim act and her victim performance. And then she would sit behind the people that she would manipulate to get physical with me, like my dad, who would, punch me with closed fists and throw me up against the wall by my feet and do all these mega abuses to me, sit on my chest and grab my hair and slam my head into the carpet over and over and over again, put me in headlocks, and I still have neck damage from my dad putting me in headlocks all the time. But nothing ever qualifies. I'm always the liar. I'm always the manipulator. I'm always the one that my mom really is. That's who she really is, but she's been an expert at being able to transfer that identity onto me and steal mine and pretend that she's me to others. And that's what she's done for years and years. So when my dad passed away, I got to see the veil be pulled in half and stripped. And for the first time in my life, I, caught my mom, who I was doing a labor of love for, and for my dead dad, I was, doing a garden for my mom and loving her that way. I was showing service, and the neighbors would start to praise me and tell me what a great job I was doing on everything, because when I got here, everything was under layers of broken, and it was just manufactured brokenness, deliberate broken, because the narcissist stomps their feet and shakes their head and has a temper tantrum and breaks things in that dance of 2 steps forward, 2 steps back. It's a merry-go-round dance of frustration to get you to explode, because you're always catering to the mess and you can never attend to yourself. It's a way of dislodging you from self-care. If you don't have the money, time, and energy for yourself, it's going to be taken and spent on their mess. And they will make sure that that mess goes on you. For if you don't treat the mess, if you don't care for the mess that they make, well, then you can't survive. So they make it about the basic common resources in your life and destroying those things in a 2 steps forward, 2 steps back, merry-go-round dance of survival. And that is what my mom has been doing to me my whole life. So this whole police thing, involving me with the police, really rerouted my whole life. It rerouted my whole life. And I never got a chance to ever make it back to myself. For 25 years, I had to deal with the police following me, running smear campaigns in coordinated auxiliary policing tactics, and doing much damage to my life, whether it's a job, whether it's, where you live in your community. It's organized and getting the neighbors and other people to participate in this type of policing. And it is profile policing, and it is community policing, and really, no crime has to be committed. It's just you're labeled a threat, and then they mete out the punishment to neutralize the threat. And you don't have to break any laws. You don't have to be guilty of anything. You just have to be labeled by enough people. And so my mom was good at getting many people to take her side and take her part, because she played that poor me, I'm a victim of John. John's abusing me. John's hurting me, when that's not what ever happened. But yet she would partner with other people that had this same sickness, this narcissistic personality disorder. And because I wasn't healed from it, I ended up meeting other women that were the same as my mom, because she was my only example. And so it, led to her connecting with those people, and then, slandering me to those people and giving them ammunition to use against me. So there was like piggybacking off the original false accusations and lies, and getting other people to do the same thing that she wanted to do to me, but I got away. So you think you get away, but they infiltrate your friends, they infiltrate everybody around you, and begin to turn the tides on you and get those people to do their abuse for them. And that is what my mom did. She was not a mother and not a friend, but only an enemy, and always doing under what's required when caught, always ghosting and vanishing after a breakdown that was deliberate, intentional destruction, and then would say to everybody else that I caused it, that I did it, and that she's saving me. This is what I mean about the savior complex. And when there's nothing to save, they just destroy everything and then say you did it, and point the finger at you and act like a victim, pretending that they're so overwhelmed with you, and that there's just so much trouble and drama that you cause them. So I just wanted to say that this is important to understand as a bedrock, as a foundation of the piggybacking that can be done by these false accusers and liars. And many of us have these people in our own family. And, before we could even get out of the starting blocks to start a life, in those developmental years, I was being sacrificed. I was being offered up. I was being put in this role and then held under the mess that I didn't create. And so, it's years of her getting others to do this to me. And it's not just her, because once the snowball starts to roll, it starts to get out of control, and then many other people join forces to make sure they keep things safe, right? And they're going to use abuse to keep things safe, which makes sense to me, doesn't it? I mean, you know what I mean? But that's what they do. They use abuse, and that's coming and going, no matter what time of the day you come and go, mirroring, mimicking your activity. If you go on a walk, they go on a walk. If you go to wash your car, they go to wash their car. If you go to the garbage, they go to the garbage. If you go to check the mail, they go to check the mail. And it's constant interaction so that you blow up, so that you react and hurt yourself and hurt others. That's the goal. So how is that keeping things safe when you're putting that kind of pressure on somebody over and over and over to get a bad reaction only? And they profile you. They psychologically profile you, and then they mete out the punishment. And that punishment mirrors, my childhood. It's exactly the same abuse that my mom did to me, the reactive abuse, trying to get a reaction at any price, at any cost, no matter what they had to do, and putting you in that much pain, and your pain never gets acknowledged. Like, I had to work through it on my own by myself after much rejection that my uncle sexually abused me. My dad and mom never wanted me to talk about it. They never wanted me to bring it to anybody's attention. And when I tried to bring it to the counselor's attention at school, I was beat up for it by my family. You know what I mean? Because my dad was under so much fear and felt that, he had worked so hard to earn the lifestyle that he had, that he wouldn't let anybody take it from him. And I wasn't trying to take it from him. It's just the immaturity that exists in these narcissists. My dad was an overt narcissist and very grandiose and bragging all the time about what he has and does. And my mom was the covert, malignant, sadistic, classic covert, malignant, sadistic narcissist. No identity, this dead mother syndrome where there is no person there, there's nobody home. And what I thought was my mother wasn't my mother. It was just an act. It was just a performance. And that was really sobering, realizing that she had been behind so much of the harassment and destruction. And when you go to get them to fix and repair the damage that they've created in your life, they'll only do what's required because they don't want to let go of the control that the damage has caused, that dependency. They want to pretend that they don't want you to depend on them, but that is the exact opposite of their actions. So when they're caught destroying the garden, destroying the hoses, destroying the boat topper, destroying the golf cart, destroying the van, there was nothing left out. But meanwhile, she was telling the neighbors that I was attacking her, that I was doing that to her, which is a complete and total fabrication and lie, because I have her on video destroying her own garden. I drive away and there she was with her scissors cutting the garden in half, having a temper tantrum because I was getting the attention from the neighbors. She couldn't share it. It's the same dynamic, getting third parties involved like that, and then going and slandering you like a victim to strangers, even people she didn't even know that would walk by the house, like on film, telling them, look what my son did. He destroyed this garden. I can't believe I would, that he would do this to me. And, I invite him down here and look how he's treating me and all this crazy nonsense. And it's total confabulation. There's nothing true about it because you're on film doing the damage to yourself. This is what I mean about the deceit and the self-harm of these narcissists. They will hurt themselves and they will destroy their own property because they know it's going to be hard to believe that, they're the ones doing the abuse. They've been so good at hiding it for so long that when you complain about it, they already know everybody else is in their back pocket because they've poisoned the well for so many years. So my mom would see me working on a project and then the neighbors would praise me and she would have a temper tantrum over it. Next thing you know, the thing that I was working on was destroyed in a 2 steps forward, 2 steps back dance to gain total control. And it didn't matter if the item was destroyed. It gave her the control and the power and the sense of superiority that she lived for. So it was these items that never got used for their proper use, to serve a function or to meet a need. They were always destroyed in a game of win-lose. And so that's my mom on video destroying the garden, telling the neighbors I'm attacking her. So for the first time in my life, I got the evidence and the proof of how crazy these people are that I've been dealing with my whole life. And then, of course, she I come around the corner with my camera and I see my mom on the ground with a hammer, and I'm looking down at her and she doesn't see me, like, peeking around the corner and looking at her. And she's taking this hammer and smashing the ends of the new hoses I just bought, because she didn't want to share the attention. I was watering my dad's tree. My dad's dead. And I started to have tears in my eyes, and she puts her hands on her hips and says, "What about me?" It's like, what about you? I miss my dad, and I'm taking care of these things because I love him. Even though he's done all these things to me, I'm showing the love of Christ, and I'm showing what God can do in somebody. You've done all this abuse to me, but yet here I am, patient, kind, loving you, doing all these things for you and this service to you, and showing you that I'm a bigger person and that I don't need to win and lose. And that's not even in my mind. But yet here she is, taking a hammer to the end of those hoses and just damaging the hose so it can't be used to water my dad's tree, to take care of something that meant a lot to me to take care of. But it's breaking those attachments to the things you love that narcissists do in order to feed off the pain and the misery of isolating you and breaking your contact with things you love and things that matter to you, things that serve you. And so my mom took that hammer, and I look around the corner with my video camera out, filming her by herself, just smashing the living daylights with a hammer out of the end of the hoses. And I come around the corner and I say, "Mom, what's going on?" And she just tosses the hose and acts very sheepish, like she had seen a ghost. And then I was using the golf cart, and it was 2 steps forward, 2 steps back. I would fix the steering. She would have the steering undone through getting her cousin and his husband, who was the maintenance person at the property that she lived at, to come over on the property and undo the steering again and again so the golf cart couldn't be used. It was 2 steps forward, 2 steps back. John doesn't deserve this. He doesn't deserve the use. He doesn't deserve to drive this. And I'm going to punish him, and I'm going to sacrifice my own things and say John is destroying it and reckless and angry, when I wasn't angry and I wasn't reckless and I wasn't destroying anything. But this is the game that they play. So I would be driving the golf cart, and I'd be across the neighborhood, and the steering would just give out, and I'd have to push the golf cart back, miles and miles. This is speaking to the energy consumption, the waste, the time, energy, and resources that the narcissist steals from you by rerouting your life onto their mess that they deliberately create in order to preoccupy you with all your attention on them, and that's what they do. They don't want anything to work. They don't want anything to be stable, because that means you're separate. You're a separate individual. You're an entity of your own. And they can't handle that. They can't accept that you have your autonomy. And that is because they're sick, and they only see themselves, and you are an extension of them purely. That's all you are. That's all you become. And they don't see you. And my mom has never seen me. She's never even seen me as a person, as an individual, as a person with my own identity. And when I stepped into my own identity, all that would happen is she would punish me for it, because it's not congruent with the role that she had cast for me. So the more my life contradicted her fantasy of grandiosity, that she's a hero, she's a savior, to stimulate that insecurity that she wouldn't look at, the more she would destroy and ruin and sacrifice and offer up the things that I was standing on for support, and those things that were her own, just to tell a narrative that's not true, and further the abuse that happened when I was a young boy, and perpetuate it by entrapment, by setting me up again and again to make it appear that I was an aggressor when I wasn't an aggressor. This speaks to the level of violence that's in these covert and malignant narcissists. They have hatred in their hearts. It is a bitterness. It is a hatred. And the hatred knows no limit. They will do anything and say anything. The hatred is so great. And it's this insecurity that's so great, the envy of wanting what is yours and wanting to take the hard things you've worked on and the hard things you've worked for and do the same thing, just destroy it, ruin it and wreck it so that you have to come to them, so that you need them. And when your attention is on any other item or a person, they can't tolerate that. That is competition over the attention that they will not tolerate. They will not put up with that. And instead of being supportive and loving and normal, they can't do that, okay? They can't be that way. So, I would go work on this boat for 2 weeks straight in the sun, at the marina, at my mom's place. And I would just work on it. And I was accomplishing things that I never thought I could do. I mean, I fixed the whole engine and fixed the throttle cable and did all these things that, that my mom and dad treated me like an infant. They infantilized me. It wasn't my fault that they deprived and denied me of the development that I needed, but I went and got it on my own. I didn't wait for them. That's the thing that she doesn't like about seeing me after all these years, is that there was no more ability to control me. There was no ability to force me into a role anymore. And I had gained such strength and power on my own that when I fixed the boat and made it look just beautiful, and I did, again, a labor of love. It's hard to be in the sun, burning hot sun, working day and night on a boat. But I just did this because my dad had passed away and I just wanted it to look good. And I wanted to take my mom out on it. And I wanted to have memories and build memories. And I thought she was normal until I started seeing all these things. But I went down and brought her on the golf cart when it was working, and brought her down to the boat after I got done. And I told her, cover your eyes, cover your eyes. And I showed her the boat and I said, look at the boat, Mom. And I just smiled because I was very proud of myself. And it was like God is with me and allowing me to accomplish these things. Praise the Lord. And all she could do was roll her eyes and shake her head and huff and puff. And I thought, well, that's a really weird reaction after I just labored in the sun, and I'm doing it for you. And I want you to enjoy your life instead of being wrapped up under these layers of broken and all these messes, that until I realized that she was intentionally creating the mess. That it wasn't an accident that the van had multiple layers of broken in the golf cart, in the hoses or whatever it might be. It was under layers of broken. And that's just to speak to the control. The insecurity is so great that you can't let it serve its need, because you're the one that wants to be needed as a gatekeeper over everything, which is not normal. But after I took her back, I said, we're going to go out on the boat tomorrow. I'm going to come pick you up and we'll launch it right here, and I'll drive and we'll take you out on the boat. I want you to enjoy the sun and I want you to feel better. So let's go out on the boat together. And I get over and I go down to the boat to load the boat with our food and just different things for the day. And I get down there, and the boat topper, somebody had taken a hammer and had smashed the boat topper. And literally you could see that, I still have the pictures, but you could see the hammer strikes all up and down the boat topper. And she had been going around telling people that I did it. And that is the nature of this abuse, the manipulation, the lack of regard, the lack of care of the consequence, and just not playing the tape through. It's like you're on film doing all these things because I'm smart. And I knew something was funny from the word go. And so I made sure to record all these things. And so she's having one of her relatives come over and literally smash the boat topper just to have it blamed on me to get rid of me. That's what she was willing to do. She invited me here, and then as soon as I got here, decided to change her mind. It's always about moving the goalposts. It doesn't matter about the damage it causes another individual. There is no help and support afterwards. You're invited to sit down on the chair, and then the legs are kicked out. And then they run and ghost and vanish and bring your life to ruin and do nothing to fix it. And you spend 25 years trying to fix the mess that you didn't make and be blamed for things you didn't make, being called mentally ill, being called unstable, being told that, you can't take care of yourself. And this is what I mean about the infantilizing. They abuse you this way so that, you have to need them like a baby. That's what they want. They don't want you to grow up. They don't want you to develop. And they interfere with that process and refuse to lift a finger when it comes to that development. so that you can't stand on your own. But I got around it and did it myself. I didn't need them. And that's the thing that my brothers never really learned truly. But so my mom had been calling my brothers, telling everyone that, I was so angry about my dad's death when it was the complete opposite. My dad's death didn't make me angry. It made me sad. But that sadness never turned to anger. I have Jesus. I know where I'm going, and I know how to process all these things that I had come to learn over 25 years and worked on myself for that long. So when she saw the finished product and realized that the game couldn't be played anymore, the escalation and the mistakes and the errors of concealing that abuse began to surface. And even to the point where she's so stupid doing it on video. And I've got her destroying the garden on video. I got her destroying the hoses on video. I got her having the golf cart undone by sending a relative over to undo the steering again and again, and destroying the boat topper on video. And here I am wanting to go out with her, wanting to have a relationship, not even thinking like this. It's not a competition to me to go use the boat and to get the attention over, the neighbors praising me for doing a good job. Like I'm not that insecure. I don't need to demand everybody stops what they're doing and focus on me. And that is what she did. She destroyed the boat topper and then turned around, had the boat topper destroyed at her order, like the puppet master, and then gets off on the power trip of getting other people to do these things in my name, and then turning around and pretending like she's a victim. And once they do the abuse and they get caught, they immediately turn to playing the victim. I don't know what happened to the boat. I don't know what's going on, John. And yet the whole time she's orchestrating and coordinating the damage. And I had been the scapegoat, the fool when young, reacting to this kind of manipulation and abuse, not knowing how to process it, not knowing how to deal with it. But now that I'm a grown man, it's impossible to do this to me anymore. And so they never want to clean up the mess, and they will break one thing after the next and interfere and collapse and control and sabotage and undermine whatever it is. And they refuse to clean it up, forcing your time, your energy, your money, your resources to have to go to that thing, because you won't survive unless you fix it, whether it's a car, whether it is a home. Those things will always be under attack, whether it's community-based policing or having a covert, malignant, sadistic narcissist in your family. And I just so happen to experience both for the last 25 years. But nothing can take away the wisdom that God has given me through this experience. Nothing can take it away. So I just wanted to tell this story about and lay the groundwork and the foundation for why my mom comes off as believable, and why she can point to things in my past and say, well, he did this, so he was arrested for this, and that makes him guilty for the rest of his life. My mom could never let go of me, and she did whatever it took. And if it meant medicating me, putting me in a psych ward for a week, if it meant putting me in jail, if it meant doing destruction in my name when I was young, and then turning around and getting other people to punish me for it, that is what she did. So I just wanted to say I love you guys. Peace out.